fix my bangs. There we go. All right, so I have so much work to do. I have so many books. I say so many. It's like 4 that I have to catch up on reviewing. I've just had a lot of memory issues with my computer. Okay, I could probably use a camera and be done with it and not worry about having room on my computer, but I don't. I can't record videos if I don't have any room on my computer, and I know another option is storing things online. I store them online and I still don't have room. That is all to tell you that if you see this outfit a lot, that is the reason why, is because I haven't been able to do my videos, and so I'm gonna try to do as many as I can, but it's late. So here we go. Today's book is The Uninvited by Kat Winters, and this is not my first read. I picked up this book because I enjoyed In the Shadow of Blackbirds. It is actually kind of apropos that I'm reading this book, or either book really, because they deal with the 1918 Spanish influenza pandemic. So we're mirroring each other a little bit with the whole COVID flu thing. I think it's been a number of years. It's been long enough that I forgot how much I didn't like this book. What I do remember is not being entirely impressed. But the one thing that has stuck with me is the biggest spoiler of them all, which I'm not going to give you quite yet. On the whole, it's really not a bad book. Not a bad story, not bad writing, but particularly with Ivy, the main character, some of her characterization was a bit unbelievable for me. And then there was a lot that was going on, and I didn't feel like it was all properly developed. It was a tad boring. There were so many exciting elements, yet I still found myself thinking, I don't care. But on to the plot. It's 1918, we're in World War I, people are dying of the flu. Ivy has just recovered from her own bout with the flu. Her brother Billy has recently died in France where he was fighting. Her other brother and her father have returned from killing a man. They live outside of town, so they've just returned from town where they killed a German business owner in retribution for Billy's death. And Ivy says, I can't be here anymore, so she leaves and she lives in town. The thing about Ivy is that the women in her family can see ghosts, and so they see ghosts as an omen of death. So when somebody has died, when somebody is about to die, she will see a loved one, a dead loved one, show up at their house. She's heading into town with this knowledge that her dad and brother committed murder. She ends up staying with the wife of an old classmate who had died in the war, and for some reason, this wife is kind of an outcast. She's not from their town, and I can't exactly remember why people don't like her. She is rather voluptuous, and I think that's part of it, where she just doesn't quite fit in. Maybe she's a little liberal for them. I haven't caught on to that even after 2 reads. Ivy feels this immense sense of guilt. She approaches this business, and when she gets there, she sees the German man's brother working on the blood stain in the floor. She approaches him, and it doesn't go well, but for some reason that doesn't deter her. And this is a problem for me because Ivy is 25, 26, and she's essentially a shut-in. Yet she has the nerve to approach the brother. I think that would take a lot of guts for anybody, knowing that her family is at fault for this tragedy. But Ivy, and this is the first of many times in which I feel like she does things that are out of character for someone who doesn't like people, someone who's really shy. I don't know if that doesn't mean that she's not brave, But for me, if I don't handle people well, I probably don't handle confrontation well. That leads into so many other aspects of what Ivy does that I just can't understand where she finds the ability to be as bold as she is. In any case, before Ivy moves in with this woman, like essentially this woman is just going to now start a boarding house for women of independent means. Before she does that, she stays a night in a hotel, and the owner of the hotel is like, so this dude, I don't remember the acronym, but he is from, I think it's the APL, the American Protection League. So basically, they are spies within their own community trying to enforce Americanism. And so he's like, this dude from the APL is also staying here, so be on your guard. Ivy realizes it's this kid named Lucas who was friends with her brother Billy. He's just really surprised to see the turn Lucas has made in his life, because he's not someone she ever would have thought would have been a snitch. She has a couple run-ins with him. He is confronting her about the fact that she spoke to a German and this, that, the other. And so she stands up for herself, but it just feels really forced. I like this tension, this dynamic of the guilt she feels about what her family has done to, the guy's name is Daniel, what they've done to his brother. She also feels the guilt of being attracted to a German when she's not allowed to be attracted to a German. I don't always buy her actions. Anywho, Ivy, going along her merry way, runs across an ambulance stuck on the train tracks. The women in the ambulance don't know how to drive it because the woman who did know how to drive it got sick with the flu. Ivy rescues them. She's able to get the ambulance off of, sorry, my bangs, they are a little long. Hi. Because of her work on her family's farm, she is able to get the ambulance started and out of the way before the train comes. And from then on, she gets involved with their work, which is going to houses of flu victims, getting them out and taking them to the hospital. You see the atrocious circumstances of the hospital, and it's not actually the real hospital. The real hospital, for one, discriminatory. So there are certain people it will not take. For two, it's pretty full. She and these other women are taking the sick to this makeshift hospital, and then they get there, and these circumstances, like, we cannot leave these people here. So they end up taking them to one of the women's homes where they can recover underneath the woman's mother's watchful eye. Along with this, she hears music, and she realizes that there's this Masonic lodge where people go and dance all night. Like, they just have a good old time. She runs into some old classmates, to an old boyfriend. And this is another thing that I thought was kind of underdeveloped. Sorry, that was a really weird kind of. But she runs into him, and she learns that his family is at the hospital because they have the flu. I guess there's still a romantic tension between them. I don't really know. His wife was one of Ivy's friends. So she had two friends growing up. One of them, again, underdeveloped plot point, had left town because she had not only gotten involved with a German, but he was married. So she was the German's mistress. Tiny, unimportant spoiler here. We learned that it was his American wife who reported him because of his affair. For sake of her life, the friend leaves, and we're left with the idea that we don't really know what happened to her because nobody's heard from her since she left. Is she alive? Is she dead? It sounds like a really interesting subplot that we never get to explore. And then there's the other friend who, after Ivy turns down the proposal, the guy marries the friend, and she cut ties for two reasons. One, because she never left her house. Two, because I think it was a little too awkward for her to be around these two people who played such vital roles in her life and now are married. So now she's trying to understand this dance hall dynamic because it's full of all kinds of people that you wouldn't think would come together. Black, white, American, German, Polish, like all kinds of people who under social propriety circumstances should not be in one room. Plus, none of them are wearing masks. And it's like, interesting. Like, why are these people so free, so unafraid of getting sick? Even though Ivy had been rejected by Daniel, she returns. And this is outside of Ivy's bravery in helping the Red Cross women and just approaching Daniel in the first place and some of her interactions with Lucas. This is what really gets me. She comes to his business. She's under the impression that he knows who she is, as in he knows her connection to his brother's death. She reapproaches him and he says, nothing can make me feel better. Nothing you do can help unless you go upstairs and sleep with me. And Ivy says yes. And I'm like, first off, early 1900s. I'm sure a lot of hanky-panky was going on. But I also feel like it was not that easy. You know, there was a lot more moral dilemma happening in that decision making just because of the times. And second, she doesn't know him. Third, he's German. Fourth, she's a spinster who never leaves her house. She hasn't been out of her house, or she hasn't left her homestead in like 10 years. Well, maybe not 10, because that means she's 15, but probably like 5 to 7 years. She hasn't left her own home. Yet, she's gonna sleep with this man? You could chalk it up to her guilt. You really could say, well, she will do anything for atonement. But it doesn't come off that way. What gets me, and then tricks me, and then gets me, she goes up to his room, and this is the first time she notices the Masonic Lodge and the music coming out of it. It's awkward, right? Like, how do we proceed? And so she's getting undressed when she hears the music. And so they start talking, and then he says, you know what? I just don't think I can do this. It's not right. So I'm thinking, okay, finally, somebody's got some good sense. But she contradicts him, and it's like, no, we have to do this. And so, yeah, they sleep together. And it just does not fall in line with the kind of person that she is presented to be. I mean, there are just so many factors that make this unfeasible. They continue in this affair, and she continues with her guilt over it because she knows, one, he's German, two, they're not married, so this should not be happening. And then she finally goes home, only to run in on her landlady. I can't remember the landlady's name right now. I'm sorry. Only to run in on the landlady sleeping with her dead husband. Right? Right. She runs out of the house because she knows the guy's dead, and the only plausible explanation is that somebody else is going to die, that this is an omen. She is convinced that her mother is in danger. She races home, and her mom says, I'm fine. We're all fine. And so she just keeps going around and doing stuff. And she's incredibly concerned that somebody's gonna die because she saw the ghost of the guy. She moves in with Daniel after stumbling across that little romance situation, only for them to get into a fight. And so then she's like, well, where do I go? Because he is just really mean to him about him being German. And so all these things just start drying up. So I'm like, okay, so where are we gonna go from here? And now I'm just gonna skip forward and tell you the major spoiler of the novel. Ivy is dead. She had gone home and talked to her mother, And the one thing Daniel would not tell her or would not let her see was the newspaper article about his brother's death. So then the mother lets her see the newspaper, and she realizes not the brother who's dead. Daniel is the one that her father and brother had killed. Daniel had been woken up when they broke in and they killed him. Then she realizes all the people at the dance hall are dead, and what do you think that means? Ivy's dead too. She didn't survive the Spanish influenza. This is what I remember loving, was all of the seeds are there. Everything points to the fact that Ivy's not actually alive. But the way that Winters depicts the afterlife makes you think that she has to be alive. So I thought that was so clever. In the end, the thing about Daniel is so the dance hall, at first I was under the impression that it was kind of like heaven, where those who accepted their death would come here and then they would move forward. Like, this was the point where they accept their situation and they move forward. But I guess it's actually heaven itself. Like, that is their ultimate destination. I don't know what these ghosts do outside of their nightly activities at the Masonic Lodge. I was questioning because so the women, the Red Cross women that we thought she had saved had actually died sometime before because they'd gotten stuck on the train tracks and the train had hit them. My thought was, or my question was, so are they sort of like angels of death? Because all the people that they're rescuing, all the people that they're bringing to the woman's home, they either are angry, they put up a fight, or they come willingly because they recognize that these angels of death have come to take them away. And I still haven't come to a conclusion if that's what they represent, but I still think it's really cool how they're doing this good work, but there's more meaning to it. So Daniel knew he was dead. One of the Red Cross women, so one of them was Polish, and she had an American husband who died in the war. They get to the Masonic Lodge, and he's there, so she is willing to move on. The other girl, her sister had died from the flu. There was a hope that her sister was there, but at the same time, she was too scared to accept death. And so she was going to keep moving on, and eventually she comes to the dance hall as well. But Daniel, so all this time, Ivy is under the impression that Daniel doesn't want to come to the Masonic Lodge because he's German, and she's afraid that they won't accept him. So Ivy arranges things so that he can understand that he is accepted there, that they accept everyone. But what turns out is his problem was that he couldn't leave the business, the furniture store that he and his brother owned. This is driving a wedge between them because I was like, I can't stay here. He's saying, well, I'm not going to leave. Spoiler, he eventually decides he'll come with her. Then her brother Billy, who she'd been seeing throughout the novel, he shows up at the lodge. It's like every time Ivy shows up, it's bigger and better and grander and more fantastic and more lively and all that stuff. It in essence, was a good book. I thought it was really interesting to see the prejudice aspect of it all. Like the one Polish Red Cross worker, how when they tried to go to the hospital, she said, we can't go to the hospital. They won't take Polish people. They will not take anybody who's not American. In many ways, it mirrors issues that we are dealing with currently. I just wish I felt more of a connection to the characters. I would have liked more of Billy because this big deal was made out of him. And he keeps showing up, yet we don't get anything of him. With Ivy, I don't understand her. How she goes from wanting to have nothing to do with anyone to being in everybody's business. She actually even gets Lucas, the APL member guy, to change his tune and come to the Masonic Lodge. I just felt like she got really strong out of nowhere. And I get it. It could be challenging herself by being involved with someone she shouldn't be involved with. It could be challenging herself by helping the Red Cross find the wounded, find the sick, and deliver them somewhere they could get better. But I didn't necessarily see growth. I saw her being busy, and I saw her freaking out, and I saw her arguing with Daniel. Even with her brother and her dad, I felt like that was better handled for her forgiveness of them. We went through more appropriate steps, like more visual. I could see how that character arc was changing. Another reveal, or spoiler, is that the dad and the brother killed Daniel not because of Billy, but because Ivy had died. So first off, the brother dies. And then I think, after a week after they receive the news, Ivy dies. That is what then sets them off, because they blame the Germans for contaminating people by being in public places, specifically a movie theater, because I guess an outbreak had occurred in a movie theater and they're like, it's your fault because you were there. It was particularly poignant with us knowing it had nothing to do with Germans. Like, you're angry with the Germans because you're fighting the Germans, but the Germans aren't necessarily responsible for the Spanish influenza. One thing I thought was really confusing was that in the beginning, it is established that the women in Ivy's family can see ghosts. And then there's a moment where she is trying to convince herself, because she's seen her brother, she has seen Eddie, so she's like, death is coming. She's trying to convince herself that everything's okay. That actually, no, the women in her family have never seen ghosts. They're just making it up out of stress or something. And then she goes back to being like, yes, ghosts are real. They're omens of death. We're really hot and cold, really up and down with this whole ghost, not ghost, I can see dead people thing. I'm gonna leave it here because there's not much else to say. I feel like if I'd done it when it was fresher, I'd be more on my game, but I have more to do. So we're done with this. I'm moving on. I hope to see you next time. Bye!